Hi there. Welcome to 15 minutes of consulting best practices. I'm David A. Fields, and normally I'm with Maria Isabel Rios, who's also a principal in my firm, but she's on vacation. When you know it, so she's left me all alone, and we'll be mixing it up over the next few months. But today you just have me. For those of you who have not been to one of these before, it's pretty straightforward. You ask questions, and we answer them, or in this case, I answer them. So if you put your question, any question you have related to consulting in the chat, it takes a minute or so, and then it pops up, and we'll answer it. Just answer it live. That's all it is, 15 minutes, and we'll dive right in. While I wait for you to post something. Oh, and happy Canada Day. I almost forgot. For those of you who are up in Canada, our neighbors to the north, happy Canada Day. And for our neighbors here in the US, almost happy 4th of July. Deidre, what did anyone submit online? And we'll start there. And we'll see what then hopefully people will chime in. Okay, John said, I had a great conversation with a prospect who was referred by a raving fan of my services. Okay, that's good. But he ignored my follow-up calls, then sent me an email saying he wasn't ready to move forward because he was too busy. I replied with an email trying to address the issues he brought up and suggesting a free trial. And it sounds like he didn't respond. So that was kind of it. Got it. All right. So this is an interesting scenario. So you went in the best possible way, right? The platinum standard in marketing is a referral with a testimonial, which it sounds like what you had. And then you had some conversation and you gave a proposal and he didn't follow up. And he sounds like he's ghosted you. And in your email, no, he said he was too busy. So will you put that up there for just one moment? I want to make sure I'm answering the right question. Email saying he was too busy. Okay, thank you, Deidre. So, and then you said, yeah, but come on, here's how you should really do it. And you're not too busy or something like that. So, John, you're not going to like my answer to this. And because Maria Isabel is in here, you only get one answer. Your approach to this was 100% upside down. You were in sales mode, focused on yourself, right? And your value and convincing this person that they're wrong in their assessment of whether now is the right time. And trying to convince them that they are wrong typically is not going to endear you to a prospect. And in fact, it could even endanger your relationship with your raving fan, the person who recommended you. Because if you come across as hard selling and not listening and no really you think it's not the right time, but all of our best clients started off by saying it's not the right time, that kind of stuff, which is pretty transparent. The person you're talking to will go back to the raving fan and say, I don't know, this I know you liked him, but he was pretty pushy, and now your raving fan has a little bit of negative input. So if someone doesn't respond and you hound them, that doesn't really show up well. If they're polite, they'll try to find a nice way to rebuff you, which is what it sounds like he did here. You didn't hear from him. You kept trying. And then he said, well, now's not really a good time. He's just being polite. Okay. So ideally in this, so what do you do now? Because I think you were a little upside down on this. So ideally, the value of your services is so high that it overcomes any possible relationship damage caused by a really hard sales approach. And there may not have been relationship damage, but there is one, hopefully, that overcomes it. And I would let this go. For just, stop trying to chase someone who has told you now's not the right time. So first, a couple of thoughts just based on what you wrote. It doesn't sound like you actually had the follow-up call booked on your calendar. So always, always, always have that next call booked. And that way you're not in a position of being ghosted or not as likely to be ghosted. And you're not in danger of missing calls and leaving voicemails and feeling like you need to hound someone. Okay, so good practice, always have the next call on the calendar. Second, if you're encountering an objection to your proposal, which is like, it sounds like where you were in the process, presumably, right? You said something and you give a proposal that he comes back and says, you know what, I'm too busy right now. then you want to use negotiation best practices. And negotiation best practices start with the strategic delay, which means you get everything out on the table. Now, that's really hard to do via email. So don't try to negotiate via email. Get into conversation. And then once you're in conversation, you can listen and say, what else? Okay, got it. You got some concerns about timing. What else? And then you always agree. Always. Not disagree, not say you're wrong. Always agree. Wow. Sounds like you've got a lot going on. I can imagine why in your shoes you'd be reluctant to add another thing to your plate. Does this feel like a temporary surge in busyness, or like a lot of executives, is there always going to be something that makes right now particularly busy? Okay, so I could obviously go into this much more, but there may have been sort of more productive ways to approach this whole thing from the start. And I think right now you can just send an email saying you value the conversations, appreciate he's very busy, and you look forward to reconnecting in a few months. So there you go. That was a long answer to that question, but hopefully it's helpful. If you are listening live, please give a comment. Did that make sense? Not make sense? Would you do something differently? Is that helpful? Not helpful? And what other questions do you have? So type that in. And if you're listening on the replay, same thing. Type it into LinkedIn. And since it's July 4th and it's probably a little quiet out there, July 4th week, Deidre, what else do we have in your magic bag of questions people submitted? Here's another one. My client wants me to fly out to present to their board. It wasn't part of the initial scope, and the meeting is weeks after the end deliverable date. On the other hand, there's potential for an extension. What's the best way to handle this? Okay, fly out to present to the board. Meeting is weeks later. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Preston. Appreciate the feedback. And again, if you guys have questions, jot them down. This is a good one. This is a good question. So thank you, Chris, for submitting it. It wasn't in scope. They want you to fly out. And, so you do it, you don't do it. It's extra expense. You don't want to be scope creep. So my response that I would recommend would probably be something along these lines. Something like, look, since we didn't discuss a board presentation when we crafted the project, I didn't include that in the scope of work. And I generally charge, whatever you charge. I charge $15,000 a day for attendance at in-person meetings. As an aside, we put a significant premium on in-person meetings now because they're so expensive in terms of time, and everybody's used to working via Zoom. But do what you want. So I might say, I generally charge whatever $15,000 a day for attendance at in-person meetings. However, given the importance of this project, I'm willing to waive that incremental fee. I'm fine presenting remotely. It's really whatever you think's best. I also still need to determine whether it's feasible for me to actually make the in-person meeting given other calendar commitments. So let me know your thoughts and we'll get back to you. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, yeah, sure, I'm willing to do this. And this is obviously a judgment call. You said you think there's big opportunity here. And our typical rule of thumb is it's worth flying for 6 figures. So if you think there's an incremental 6 figures, then that's probably worth getting on a plane for and spending your own money on, though you could expense this one in all likelihood. But it's worth the investment in time. But what I'm also saying is, yeah, sure, I'll do this and I'll waive the fee, but let me check feasibility, putting some idea out there that the client might come back and say, well, virtual would be great. Virtual would be fine. And now we get to present to the board and not eat up all that time traveling. So that's probably where I would go with that. Same question, Mike, Preston, useful, not useful? Anyone else listening? Helpful, not helpful? Questions that sparks. It's always interesting trying to manage that kind of scope creep where it seems like there's an opportunity, but you also don't want to get sucked into just spending tons of time and money. All right. Nothing coming in from the outside. So let's see what else we've got, Deidre. David, could you share the story of how you started your practice? I'm thinking about starting my own small business consulting practice, and I'm not sure where to begin. You want me to share the story of starting my practice? I was a wee tot. Gosh. Okay. I'll do the 3.5 minute. We'll see how I do on this. FaceTime with decision makers is valuable. Yeah, balancing is important. Totally agree, Preston. Totally agree, 100%. Okay, so the story of my practice, if you're listening, hopefully it's useful and there'll be something instructive in it. Perhaps the most important parts are where I actually made mistakes along the way and missteps, and maybe you can avoid some of them. I had already been in consulting for a decade-ish, worked my way up in a firm before I co-founded Ascendant. So I co-founded my firm in 2005, and that didn't last long because, as my co-founder pointed out, I couldn't sell water in the desert. In fact, if he had a project lined up, I could effectively unsell it. And since winning engagements is half the consulting cycle, that was a problem. And it became even more of a problem when he left. So, because I was supposed to be the delivery guy, I'm basically a quant delivery person. So I had to find a way to win engagements, and not as a salesperson. I'm not a salesperson. I had to find a way to win engagements as a delivery guy. And so I developed an approach that worked for me, for someone who's prefers delivery, not prefers selling. Okay, so now I'm going to skip all the years of running Ascendant Consulting and the Ascendant Consortium, and I'll fast forward to the beginnings of the practice as it is now, which is 100% totally different from the firm I had back then. So a couple of things happened. One, some consultants I was working with at Ascendant asked for coaching. They wanted to know how now I was able to win projects and big projects. And I saw someone else being paid to give advice to consultants. And that told me there was a viable market. So kind of on a lark, it wasn't meant to be the business. I started taking on a couple of consulting practices as clients. And it was a side hustle for a year or two while I tested it out and while I listened to the market. And then I learned even better what works for folks, and I fine-tuned my IP, building on top of spectacular work other people had done, right? Not making up everything myself. So for me, the key to the story is I listened and followed the market. I experimented with things. I learned. I also invested, like really heavily invested. I invested my energy. I invested my finances. I took what at the time felt like a really big bet and hired a coach that is still with me, that has seen me double the business twice at least. And that has been enormously helpful because I don't think I have the answers. I have the answers on how to grow a consulting practice, but I don't think I have the answers about everything around the business and my own business and what the market wants. So I listen to the market and I turn to folks who are experienced and can give guidance. And that more than anything has helped me course correct and grow and get through some stages. Like hiring folks, I find really challenging, but I keep learning. And so it's kind of progressed that way, just letting the market guide me to where it wanted to be. That was even less than 3.5 minutes, 2.5 minutes. So I don't know if that story is helpful, but there you go. And if you're going to start your own practice, that would be my suggestion, is you have to start it not based on what you want to do, start it based on what the market wants. I got into this practice because the market was telling me it wants it. There were consultants saying we could use help. And I listened to that and found that I could create a lot of value. And then more consultants say I wanted help. Okay, so go in listening as opposed to go in saying, oh, I love working with mouses. And so I'm going to do a mouse consulting business. That doesn't work. Okay. And there you go. Having told the story of my practice, we've hit our time already, bottom of the hour or bottom of the half hour. So thank you for spending 15 minutes with me. Before you go, a couple of quick things. If you don't have davidafields.com Monday Live, like Deidre put down here, in your calendar, just add it to your calendar, because that way you always come to the right link. LinkedIn resets it every week. So if you do that, you'll always come to the right place at the right time. If you don't get the weekly articles, just subscribe, davidafields.com, subscribe. Colleen said, what if you see what needs to be done and no one is doing it? That's usually a pretty bad sign. We'll cover that next time. Deidre, mark that down. And next week, we're going to hit that follow-up question on what if no one's doing it in the market? Because I have two answers on that, two sides to that. So subscribe. Last thing, I think that's it, right? So thanks for being here. Have a fabulous week. For those of you in the US, have a fabulous 4th of July weekend. For those of you in Canada, have a great Canada Day. Remember, consulting isn't about you. It's about them. It's about your clients. It's about your prospects. So give them value and give them kindness. And I will see you back here next week. Take care.